I woke up to the soft warmth of morning sunlight spilling through the sheer curtains. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the crisp autumn breeze drifting in through the slightly open window. I reached out instinctively, expecting my fingers to graze the familiar touch of my wife's skin. But the sheets beside me were cold. A frown settled on my face as I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Amara?" I called, my voice thick with drowsiness. No response. The air in the bedroom felt off. I shook my head, pushing away the lingering unease creeping up my spine. Maybe she had gone out for a morning walk or was downstairs making breakfast. Sliding out of bed, I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and checked for messages. Nothing. That was unusual. Amara always left me a text whenever she stepped out. A simple, "gone for a walk, love you," or "had to grab groceries, be back soon." Still, I reasoned with myself. Maybe she was just busy. I got up, stretched, and made my way downstairs. The house was silent. No clatter of dishes, no humming from the kitchen. The smell of coffee was there, but the pot sat cold on the counter. My stomach clenched. "Amara?" I called again, louder this time. My voice echoed through the empty halls. Something was terribly wrong. I walked from room to room, checking every corner of the house. The living room was untouched. The dining table still had the single empty mug I had left there last night. The study, the bathroom, the guest room, nothing. No sign of her. I stood in the middle of the living room, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, dialing her number. "The number you have dialed is not in service." My blood ran cold. That made no sense. I had called Amara just last night before bed. I tried again. Same response. Panic seized me as I scrolled through my contacts. Her name was gone. The text messages we had exchanged, the pictures of us together, vanished. My hands shook violently as I opened my gallery, scrolling frantically. Not a single picture of her. I nearly dropped my phone. This wasn't possible. My entire phone was wiped clean of any trace of Amara. My mind reeled as I tried to make sense of it. Had my phone glitched? Some kind of virus? But that didn't explain why she wasn't here. I ran upstairs to check her wardrobe. My breath caught in my throat. It was empty. Every drawer, every hanger, empty. I clutched my head, my pulse hammering against my skull. I had lived with her for 4 years. How could every trace of her just vanish? I rushed to my laptop, searching through old backups, emails, anything. No emails from Amara. No saved pictures of our wedding, no messages, no notes in my planner. My heart pounded as I logged into social media. My relationship status said single. The posts I had made with Amara, the anniversary pictures, the vacations, gone. I scrolled through my friends list, searching for mutual friends who might have tagged us together. Nothing. I clicked on my friend Ali's profile and messaged him. "Ali, something's wrong. I can't find any pictures of Amara. Do you still have any?" A minute later, he replied, "Who's Amara?" My stomach lurched. I typed frantically. "My wife, Amara. We've been married for 4 years. You were at our wedding." There was a long pause before his response came. "I have no idea what you're talking about, man. You've never been married." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. This had to be a joke, a cruel prank. But why would Ali joke about something like this? My hands trembled as I called my mother. She picked up after 2 rings. "Beta, is everything okay?" "Mom," I whispered, my throat dry. "Where is Amara?" Silence. "Who?" I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. "Amara, my wife. We had dinner at your place last week," I shouted, my voice cracking. There was a pause, then a worried tone in her voice. "Beta, I don't know what's going on, but you've never been married." I felt like I was going insane. "No," I breathed. "That's not possible. She was here, just last night." "You met her. Everyone met her." "Asan," my mother's voice softened. "Are you feeling okay? Do you need me to come over?" I hung up. I stumbled back, my chest tightening, my breath ragged. I turned to my wedding ring, desperately needing proof. My hands shook as I reached for my left ring finger. The ring was gone. I let out a strangled gasp, my vision swimming. My breathing became erratic as I darted back upstairs to check our wedding album. I yanked open the cabinet, my hands fumbling to pull out the thick leather-bound book. It was empty. The pages were blank. I felt my knees buckle as I crashed onto the floor, gripping the album, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out all other sounds. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I had a wife, didn't I? Memories of her flooded my mind. Our first meeting, our wedding day. The little moments we had shared, the way she smiled, the warmth of her hand in mine, the scent of her shampoo lingering in the air. She was real. She had to be real. Then why was everyone acting like she never existed? A cold realization slithered down my spine. What if she was gone, not just physically, but erased, like she had never been here at all? And worse, what if I was the only one who remembered? I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, clutching the empty wedding album like a lifeline. My mind felt like it was splitting apart, trapped between what I knew was real and what the world was trying to convince me was a lie. Amara had existed. I wasn't crazy. But if that was true, then where was she? And why was everyone acting like she had never been here at all? I needed proof, something tangible, something they couldn't erase. I scrambled to my feet, gripping my phone with sweaty fingers. There had to be something they missed, a forgotten trace of her existence. I opened my bank app. My hands trembled as I scrolled through transactions. We had a joint account. We used it all the time, for groceries, vacations, bills. It was gone. The joint account no longer existed. My stomach twisted into knots as I checked my house ownership documents. The house we had bought together, the place where we had made a home. The papers listed only my name. No co-owner. I felt like I was going to be sick. I rushed to my closet, yanking open the doors. Amara's clothes, her neatly folded sweaters, the dresses she loved, her shoes lined up beside mine, gone. My shirts, my jeans, my suits were all there, but there was no trace of her belongings. I dug into the bedside drawer where she kept her jewelry, her favorite silver bracelet, the little locket I had gifted her on our first anniversary. Empty. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. I turned the house upside down, searching for anything, just one thing that could prove she was real. A note, a receipt, a strand of hair on her hairbrush. Nothing. It was as if she had never lived here at all. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. Was this some kind of elaborate trick, some psychological experiment, or was I losing my mind? No, I couldn't think like that. I wasn't crazy. A sharp knock on the door jolted me out of my thoughts. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I hesitated before walking to the door, my pulse hammering in my throat. When I opened it, Ali stood there, his brows knitted together in concern. "Hassan, what's going on with you?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "You sent me that weird message about being married, and then you didn't pick up my calls." I swallowed hard. "Because it's not weird. I am married. Or at least, I was." Ali gave me a long, searching look. "Hassan, I think you need to rest, man. You've been working too hard. Maybe you're stressed." I let out a bitter laugh. "You think I just imagined 4 years of my life? You were at my wedding, Ali. You gave a toast. You said, 'To Hassan and Amara, may your love always burn brighter than your arguments.' I remember it." Ali's face was blank. "I never said that, and I swear I don't know anyone named Amara." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're lying," I whispered. He sighed. "I wish I was. But Hassan, I think you need help." I clenched my fists. "I don't need help. I need someone to believe me." Ali hesitated, then placed a hand on my shoulder. "Listen, let's go see a doctor, maybe a neurologist. Memory issues can be—" I shoved his hand away. "I don't need a doctor. I need someone to tell me what the hell is happening to my life." Ali held up his hands in surrender. Okay. Just calm down." I sucked in a shaky breath. "I need to find her, Ali. I don't care if no one else remembers her. I do, and I know she's real." Ali hesitated, as if debating whether to push the issue. Finally, he sighed. "All right, what do you want to do?" I ran a hand through my hair, my thoughts racing. "There has to be something left behind, some proof." "Like what?" "Our wedding. There was a photographer. There was a venue. I'll find something." Ali exhaled heavily. "Fine, I'll help. But if we find nothing, you have to promise me you'll at least consider seeing someone about this." I nodded, though I had no intention of giving up even if we found nothing. Together, we left the house and drove straight to the wedding hall where we had celebrated our union 4 years ago. As we pulled into the parking lot, an eerie feeling settled over me. What if they told me the same thing? What if there was no record? I swallowed down the fear and walked inside. A receptionist greeted us, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "How can I help you?" she asked, smiling politely. I cleared my throat. "I need to check your event records. I had my wedding here 4 years ago." She tilted her head. "Name?" "Hassan Malik." My wife's name was Amara Malik. She nodded and began typing into her computer. My heart pounded as I watched her expression, waiting for any sign of recognition. A few moments later, she frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see any records of a wedding under that name." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "Check again," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed but obliged. A few minutes later, she shook her head. "No records, sir. Are you sure it was here?" "Yes," I snapped. "I remember everything. The decorations, the guests, the food." Ali placed a hand on my arm, a silent plea for me to calm down. The receptionist gave me a wary look. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's nothing I can do." I took a step back, my head spinning. I turned to Ali. "The photographer. I still have his number." I dialed it with shaky fingers. After 3 rings, a man's voice answered. "Hello? Come run by. It's Hassan. You photographed my wedding 4 years ago. I need those pictures. It's urgent." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry. Who is this?" I gritted my teeth. "Hassan, you took my wedding photos. I hired you. Don't you remember?" "I think you have the wrong person. I don't recall ever photographing a wedding for you." My body went numb. I turned to Ali, my hands shaking. "You see, it's like she never existed." Ali swallowed, his face pale. "Hassan, maybe you should." I didn't let him finish. I ran out of the wedding hall gasping for breath. The sky seemed darker, the air heavier. Nothing made sense. Every record, every person, every memory outside of my own mind, gone. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing reality itself. And then, as I stood in the parking lot trying to steady my breathing, I felt something cold crawl up my spine. A presence, like someone was watching me. I turned around, and for a split second, just a flicker in the corner of my vision, I saw her. Standing at the far end of the lot, Amara. My heart stopped, but before I could move, before I could even call her name, she vanished. Like a ghost. For a fleeting moment, she had been there. Amara. Amara. Standing across the parking lot just far enough that I couldn't make out her expression, but close enough that I knew it was her. And then she was gone. Vanished into thin air, like a mirage dissolving under the heat of the sun. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled forward, my legs barely carrying me. "Amara!" I screamed, my voice raw with desperation. There was no answer, no sign she had ever been there at all. Ali caught up to me, gripping my arm. "Hassan, what the hell are you doing?" His eyes followed my gaze, but I could see it in his expression. He hadn't seen her. "You didn't?" My voice faltered. "Didn't what?" Ali asked cautiously. "You didn't see her?" My own voice sounded foreign, hollow. Ali shook his head slowly. "Hassan, there was no one there." My stomach twisted painfully. "I saw her, Ali. I swear to God, I saw her." Ali exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "You're scaring me, man. First, you think you're married, now you're seeing people who aren't there?" I jerked away from him. "Don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm crazy. I saw her." Ali sighed. "Even if you did, where is she now?" I turned in a slow circle, scanning every inch of the parking lot, the street beyond it, the sidewalks, the passing cars. Nothing. The space where she had stood was empty. Had I imagined it? No. No, I couldn't have. I knew Amara's face better than my own. The way her dark hair curled slightly at the ends, the soft curve of her lips, the small mole near her left eye. That was her. It had to be. But if she was still here somewhere, then why couldn't anyone else see her? I swallowed hard. "I need to go home," I muttered. Ali studied me for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I'll drive." I didn't argue. My mind was too tangled, too full of fear and questions. The drive back was silent. I kept staring out the window, half expecting to see Amara again, watching me from the sidewalk, peering from a passing car, but there was nothing. By the time we reached my house, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the quiet street. Ali killed the engine and turned to me. "Look, man, I don't know what's happening to you, but if you need help, I'm here." I nodded absently, barely hearing him. My focus was on my front door, an overwhelming feeling settling in my gut. I wasn't alone in that house. I could feel it. "Just try to get some rest," Ali said, squeezing my shoulder before driving off. I didn't reply. Slowly, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Still, but something felt wrong. The air was heavier than before, like the house was waiting for me. I took a shaky breath and walked in, closing the door behind me. I turned on the lights. Nothing seemed out of place. The furniture, the photos, the ones that didn't include Amara at least, the rug, the coffee table. It all looked normal. Too normal. Like someone had carefully arranged everything to make it seem like nothing was wrong. I stepped into the kitchen. The smell of coffee still lingered faintly in the air, the way it had that morning. I ran a hand over the counter, my fingers brushing against the smooth surface. Then I noticed something. A mug, not mine. A white ceramic mug with a faint crack near the handle. Amara's mug. My breath hitched. Slowly, I reached out and touched it. It was ice cold. Had it always been here? Had I just missed it earlier? No, I had checked the entire house this morning. Her things were gone. And yet, this was here. My pulse pounded in my ears as I lifted the mug and turned it over in my hands. A drop of liquid slid down the inside. It had been used recently. I set it down carefully, my hands trembling. A noise echoed from upstairs. I froze. A faint thump. My heartbeat stuttered. I wasn't alone. I swallowed hard and grabbed the nearest object, a kitchen knife. Clutching it tightly, I moved toward the staircase. Each step creaked under my weight as I ascended. My throat was dry, my grip sweaty around the knife handle. Another sound, a soft shuffle, like someone moving. I reached the top of the stairs, my breath coming in short gasps. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dimly lit by the fading daylight. I turned toward my bedroom. The door was slightly open. I had left it closed. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I pushed the door open slowly, knife raised. The room was empty. But then I saw it, the closet door. It was open, wide open. My stomach dropped. Amara always left the closet door closed. It was one of her little quirks. She hated sleeping with it open. I took a slow step forward. My muscles locked with tension. Something shifted inside the closet. A breath. I wasn't imagining it. There was someone there. I forced myself to move, inching closer. The darkness inside the closet seemed deeper than it should be, like it stretched on forever. I reached out with my free hand, ready to yank the door fully open, and then a whisper drifted out. Low, soft, familiar. Asan. The knife slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the floor. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. Amara? Silence. I took a shaky step back, my heart slamming against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. The shadows inside the closet shifted, and then a pale hand reached out, grasping, reaching for me. The hand stretched out from the darkness of the closet, pale and trembling. My breath caught in my throat as my body locked in place. Amara? My voice was barely a whisper. The hand twitched. Fingers curled slightly as if beckoning me closer. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of that room, to flee the house and never look back. But I couldn't, because deep down, I knew it was her. I took a slow step forward, my pulse hammering. The air around me felt heavier, thick like a suffocating fog. Amara, is it really you? The hand flinched, then retreated into the darkness of the closet. No, wait. I lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the closet door and pulling it open all the way. Nothing. The closet was empty. Just rows of my clothes hanging motionless. Amara wasn't there. My skin prickled as a wave of ice-cold fear washed over me. I could feel her presence. I wasn't imagining it. Then why couldn't I see her? I stepped inside hesitantly, my fingers brushing against the hanging clothes. The scent of faded lavender clung to the air, Amara's perfume. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of her, and then a whisper, right behind me. My entire body went rigid. Slowly, painfully, I turned around. For a fraction of a second, I saw her. Amara's face, pale, hollow-cheeked, her dark eyes filled with something I couldn't understand. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something. But before she could, the light flickered and she disappeared. A shuddering breath escaped my lips as I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. I wasn't crazy. I had seen her. She was still here. But something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. I spent the rest of the night with the lights on, my back pressed against the couch, gripping a blanket like it could somehow protect me. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. She looked like Amara, but not quite like her. Something was missing. Something in her eyes. By morning, I had made a decision. If Amara was here, if some part of her still existed, then I needed to find out why. I couldn't rely on Ali. He didn't believe me. I needed help from someone who understood things beyond logic. And I knew exactly where to start. The old part of the city was a maze of narrow alleys and crumbling buildings, where the air smelled of spices, incense, and something ancient. I had only been here once before, years ago, when Amara had dragged me to visit a so-called fakir, a mystic who claimed to see beyond the physical world. I had laughed it off back then. Now I was desperate. I finally found the small shop tucked between two abandoned buildings. Faded cloth hung over the entrance, and the scent of burning herbs drifted from inside. I hesitated before stepping through the curtain. The room was dimly lit by flickering candles, their wax pooling onto a wooden table covered in old books and strange trinkets. A frail, hunched man sat behind the table, his piercing eyes lifting to meet mine. "You have seen something," he said before I could even speak. His voice was low, scratchy, like dry leaves rustling in the wind. I swallowed hard. I think my wife she's not dead," he finished for me. A chill ran down my spine. I stared at him, my hands clenched. "Then what happened to her?" The fakir studied me for a long moment before motioning for me to sit. I did, my heart hammering. He reached for a small bowl filled with blackened herbs and tossed a pinch of them into a clay burner. A curl of thick blue smoke rose into the air. "Tell me," he said, his voice distant. "What do you remember about the last time you saw her?" I hesitated, my mind racing back to that night. The argument. The rain. Amara's angry eyes as she stormed out the door. How I had let her go. I gritted my teeth. She left after a fight. I thought she just needed time. But when I went looking for her, she was gone. And now no one remembers her. It's like she never existed. The fakir exhaled deeply, his gaze darkening. She was taken. My breath caught. Taken by who? He tossed more herbs into the burner, the smoke curling into eerie shapes. His voice dropped lower. There are things in this world that exist outside of time, beings that slip between shadows, unseen, unnoticed. Sometimes they take interest in a person, a soul that shines too brightly. Sometimes, his gaze locked onto mine, they erase them. A shiver crawled down my spine. Erase? He nodded. They do not kill. They do not destroy. They simply remove from memory, from records, just from existence itself, as if the person was never born. My hands curled into fists. Then why do I remember her? The fakir studied me. Because she left something behind, a tether, something that keeps her connected to you. I thought of the coffee mug, the closet door opening, her whisper in the dark. Can I bring her back? I asked, my voice barely steady. The fakir was silent for a long moment. Then he said, yes, but the ones who took her, they will not let her go easily. The air in the shop suddenly felt colder. I swallowed. What do I have to do? The fakir leaned forward, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. You must find where she was taken, the place where she vanished from this world, the street where she disappeared, where I had let her walk away that night. As realization sank in, the candles in the shop flickered violently, the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. And then, just for a second, a whisper drifted through the air. Asan, help me. Amara's voice, soft, desperate, and coming from nowhere. My blood turned to ice. The fakir's eyes darkened. They know you are looking for her now. A shadow passed over the doorway. Something was out there, watching, waiting, and I had just made myself their next target. The fakir's words settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. They know you are looking for her now. I swallowed hard and turned toward the entrance. The shadow that had passed by was gone, but the air in the small shop felt thick, as if something unseen still lingered. Who are they? I asked, my voice barely steady. The fakir didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for a small wooden box and opened it carefully. Inside was a vial of dark liquid and a piece of cloth wrapped around something heavy. You must return to the place she was taken, he said, his voice slow and measured. And when you do, you must be prepared. They will try to stop you. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing an old, rusted key. It was strange, larger than a normal house key with symbols etched into its surface. I frowned. What is this? A key to the other side. A chill crawled up my spine. I don't understand, I admitted. The other side of what? The fakir's gaze was unreadable. The veil between worlds is thin in certain places. It is not just death that claims souls. There are other forces, beings who exist in the cracks of reality, who take what they desire and leave no trace behind. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. And you think that's what happened to Amara? He nodded. Then I'll bring her back, I said, more to myself than to him. Whatever it takes. The fakir held out the key. This will only work if she is still tethered to this world. If she is too far gone. He hesitated. You must be ready to let her go. A pit formed in my stomach. I reached out and took the key. its surface ice cold against my skin. "Take the vial as well," the fakir added. "When the time comes, you will know what to do with it." I had no idea what that meant, but I nodded anyway and slipped the items into my pocket. As I stood, the fakir's voice dropped to a whisper. "Be careful. You are walking a path that few return from." I turned and stepped out into the night. The street where Amara disappeared was nearly deserted. A single flickering lamp cast long shadows across the pavement, the quiet hum of the city distant and muffled. I stood at the exact spot where I had last seen her, the place where she had turned her back on me and walked away, the place where she had vanished. I took a slow, steadying breath. "Amara," I whispered. Nothing. Just the rustling of wind through the empty street. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. Its weight felt heavier now, as if something unseen pressed against it. Slowly, I knelt and placed it against the pavement. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low hum vibrated through the ground beneath me. The key grew warm. A strange pressure filled the air, making my ears ring. The shadows around me deepened, stretching unnaturally as the flickering street lamp dimmed. And then, a door appeared. It wasn't a real door, not in the way that normal doors existed. It was more like a tear in reality itself, outlined by darkness so deep it seemed to swallow the light around it. A doorway that led to somewhere else. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. I should have hesitated. I should have questioned whether stepping through that door was a mistake. But I didn't, because on the other side of that darkness, I heard a voice. "Asan, help me." Amara. Without another thought, I stepped forward, and the world swallowed me whole. The first thing I noticed was the cold, not just a physical cold, but a bone-deep chill that seeped into my very being. I blinked, my vision adjusting to the dim, unnatural light around me. I wasn't in the city anymore. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. The sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds, shifting unnaturally like something alive. The air was thick, heavy, pressing against my lungs. The ground beneath me was wrong, a mixture of cracked stone and something that almost looked like blackened bone. And in the distance, rising out of the darkness like a jagged wound in reality, was a house. Not just any house. My house. I took a shaky step forward, my breath fogging in the frigid air. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. And yet, it was. I moved toward the house, my footsteps echoing unnaturally in the silence. The door was slightly open. A deep sense of unease settled in my chest. I knew I should turn back, but Amara was in there. I could feel her. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me. The house was dark, not the kind of darkness that comes from the absence of light. This was something else, a darkness that watched, a darkness that waited. I took another step, my heartbeat loud in my ears. A faint sound drifted through the stillness, a whisper, soft, faint. Asan, my stomach twisted. Amara? The whisper came again from deeper inside the house. I forced myself forward, down the familiar hallway, past the furniture that looked like mine but felt wrong until I reached the bedroom. The door was open. Inside, the air felt even heavier, thick with something I couldn't name. And then I saw her. Amara. She stood near the window, her back to me, her long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. My breath caught. Amara. I rushed toward her. She turned, and my blood ran cold. Her face, it was Amara, but something was missing. Her eyes, once so full of life, were empty, a hollow, endless void where her soul should have been. She opened her mouth, and something else spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice wasn't hers, it wasn't human. The shadows around the room moved, and then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed me whole, not just the absence of light, but something alive. It pressed against my skin, slithered into my ears, coiled around my throat like unseen fingers. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, a whisper, low, hollow. "You don't belong here, Asan." It wasn't Amara's voice, it wasn't anyone's voice. It was something ancient, something wrong. And it was inside my head. A cold breath brushed against my ear. "Leave before you are forgotten too." A sharp pain shot through my skull, and suddenly, light. The room flickered back into view, and I stumbled backward, gasping for air. Amara was still there, but it wasn't her. Her face, so familiar, so beloved, was twisted, wrong. Her skin was too pale, her lips too still, her eyes too empty. She blinked, slow, mechanical, like a puppet trying to mimic life. Asan. she whispered, her voice layered as if more than one thing was speaking through her. I took another step back. Amara? She tilted her head, and then she smiled. Not the warm, soft smile I had known for years. This was a void of a smile. A black hole stretched across her face. You came for me, she whispered. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was her, but something inside me screamed that it wasn't. Something else was wearing her skin. I forced myself to stand firm. Where is she? Her expression didn't change. I am right here, Asan. My fists clenched. No, the real Amara, the one you took. The smile faded. For a second, her face twitched like a glitch in reality. Then she laughed, low, hollow, inhuman. You still don't understand, do you? The room shifted. The walls stretched, pulsing like they were breathing. The shadows slithered, crawling toward me. You hold on to something that no longer exists, she said, taking a slow step forward. She is gone, Asan. She belongs to us now. A chill ran down my spine. Us? Something moved in the corner of my eye. I turned and my blood ran cold. The walls were covered in faces. Hundreds, twisted, silent faces, some screaming, some weeping, some blank with emptiness, all trapped. And among them, one face I would know anywhere, Amara, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth open as if calling out to me, but there was no sound. I staggered back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The thing in Amara's shape laughed again. She is part of us now, it whispered. A memory, a fragment, a shadow in the in-between. My entire body trembled. Then I'll take her back, I growled. The air grew heavy. The thing's smile vanished. You can't. I pulled the vial from my pocket, the one the fakir had given me. I didn't know what it would do, but I knew I had no other choice. The thing's hollow eyes locked onto it, and for the first time, it hesitated. Fear flickered across its face. Where did you get that? It took a step back. I didn't answer. I pulled the cork off the vial and poured it onto the ground. The moment the dark liquid touched the floor, the room shook. The shadows screamed. The walls rippled. A deep, echoing howl filled the air like 1,000 voices wailing in agony. The thing wearing Amara's face clutched its head, its form glitching, distorting, unraveling. The faces on the walls shifted, some vanished, some escaped. And then Amara's voice, clear, desperate. Asan, I turned. Her face, her real face, pressed against the shifting walls, her eyes wide with pleading. I ran toward her. The walls collapsed, the shadows shrieked. And just before the world shattered, I reached out, grabbed her hand, and pulled. A deafening shriek ripped through the air as I yanked Amara's hand, pulling her from the shifting walls of faces. The darkness convulsed. The entire realm shook, splitting apart like fragile glass. I didn't let go. Amara's fingers were cold, too cold, but she was solid. She was real. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine. Asan, she gasped. Don't let go. I wouldn't. Not again. Behind us, the thing that had worn her face twisted and screamed. Its body glitched and ripped apart, its hollow form collapsing into a writhing mass of black tendrils. The walls groaned, the floor cracked, the world was falling apart. And then, the door. The same jagged tear in reality I had stepped through to get here. It was flickering, weak, unstable. It was our only chance. Run! I shouted. Amara and I sprinted, the ground crumbling beneath our feet. The faces in the walls howled, vanishing into the darkness as the entire place collapsed in on itself. The shadows surged after us, reaching, clawing, desperate to take her back. I pushed forward, forcing every ounce of strength into my legs. The door was shrinking. If we didn't make it in time, no. I refused to lose her again. With one final lunge, we dove and fell through. Pain. My body hit the cold pavement, my head slamming against the ground. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then, fresh air. Real air. The scent of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the dim flicker of the street lamp. I was back, I gasped, sucking in deep, ragged breaths. Then I turned and saw her. Amara lay beside me, her chest rising and falling, her fingers curled against the pavement. She was real. Real. Amara. My voice cracked as I reached out, brushing my hand against her cheek. Warm. Alive. Her eyes fluttered open. She stared at me, dazed. And then she sobbed. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. I thought I lost you, she whispered against my chest. I closed my eyes. I thought I lost you. For what felt like forever, we just sat there, tangled in each other, shaking. She was here. She was real. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. We returned home just before sunrise. The house was the same, but different. Amara walked through the room slowly, got her fingers tracing over furniture, pictures, memories that had almost been erased. And then she stopped. She turned to me, her brows furrowed. Asan, why does everything feel off? I swallowed. I had felt it too. The house was ours. But at the same time, it wasn't. It was like reality had stitched itself back together, but some of the threads were wrong. There were little things. The clock in the living room was 3 minutes ahead. The couch had a throw blanket we had never owned before. The picture on the hallway wall, one from our wedding, was missing. And when I checked my phone, there were no photos of Amara. None. Like she had never existed. A cold chill crept down my spine. She was here. She was alive. But the world still refused to remember her. I clenched my fists. No, I would not accept that. I grabbed my phone, took a picture of Amara standing in front of me, and checked the gallery. My stomach dropped. The image was corrupted, a blur, a smear of darkness where her face should have been. Asan? Amara's voice was small. I looked up at her, really looked at her. She was here, but something had changed. Something unnatural had followed us back, and deep down, I knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.